All right, today I'm going to show you all how to make a seafood gumbo. Your first and most important component of any gumbo is going to be your roux, which, as you can see right here, I'm really proud of this one. I'll be honest, all the years that I've ever made gumbo, I've always used a stock pot, and I found that a lot of spatter occurred while I was stirring it, which made it a very painful and tedious process. As anyone knows, a roux is made of three simple components: oil, butter, and flour, and it's just a matter of this for 30 to 40 minutes over a medium-low heat. And I mean, if you burn it, you have to start all over again, right? So it's kind of, it's tricky. But being that I was doing it in a big stock pot, I was encountering a lot of spatter and burning myself often. It was very frustrating, it was very tedious. So I used a saucepan this time, and it was like, wow, night and day. So yeah, in order to make the roux, what you're gonna do is you're gonna need a half a cup of oil, vegetable oil. You're gonna need a cup of flour, all-purpose, and then you're gonna use a quarter cup of butter. And what you wanna do is you'll add, first of all, you'll add your butter in there with your oil, melt that down, and then you will add the flour in. And then after that's all settled in, you have your heat at medium-low. You're gonna stir it on the stovetop for, like I said, 30 to 40 minutes. Gauge it on what your preference is. It could be a light brown, it could be a copper penny brown like you see here, but as long as you keep it within that time frame, you should get your suggested roux for your base. Now that we've covered the roux, I'm gonna set this off to the side until we get to that step. Right over here. And as I mentioned, we are making a seafood gumbo, so we are using gumbo crabs and shrimp. We're not doing sausage, obviously. I'm pescatarian, plant-based, so that was like a no-go from the start. What you'll do to make your own shrimp stock, which is what your gumbo is gonna be cooked in, simmered in for an hour and a half, is you're gonna take the shells from the 2 pounds of shrimp that you're using for the recipe, and you will put them in a stock pot, like I had mentioned before, with a quarter cup of butter and the 2 pounds of shrimp shells, and you're going to mix them around until they get to a pink, like a mild pink. And then you will add in 64 ounces of vegetable broth, and you will bring that to a boil, and you will let that, once it gets to a boil, you'll bring it back down to a simmer for about 15 minutes. And then you will have this right here at the end, which I'm about to strain through my little sieve here into this pot so we can have it ready to go once we get the Trinity and everything cooking in the stock pot, which we'll get to the Trinity in a minute. I'll explain to you what the Trinity is. All right, so hopefully I don't make a fucking mess. Just gonna strain it through like that. Easy peasy. As you can see, these are the shrimp shells that I mentioned. Pink. Every last bit of goodness out of there. Set that off to the side. And that is your shrimp stock. So a lot of times when you're listening to people talk about Cajun cuisine, you'll hear a word thrown around called the Trinity. Well, basically what the Trinity is 3 key components to the starter of any Cajun recipe. Right here I have, this is a celery bell pepper mix. It's 2 cups worth. And then I have 2 cups of yellow onion chopped up. And then 2 tablespoons of garlic here, chopped. So these are your key components to the Trinity, as you always hear about in Cajun recipes. I'm gonna get that stock pot warmed up with my roux. I'm gonna go ahead and add the Trinity in, cook it down for a bit. I'm gonna follow that up with the shrimp stock that I showed you that I made through the sieve. And then I'm gonna add in our Louisiana exclusive spices, which feature a 12-ounce bottle of Abita Springs Brewed Abita Amber Lager, followed by a tablespoon of Tony Chacheres, which is made here in Opelousas, Louisiana. I'm in Shreveport, but still, Louisiana represent. And then 2 teaspoons Worcestershire. We're gonna follow that up with a teaspoon of thyme. It says dried thyme, but I have ground thyme, and honestly, it's not a big difference. And of course, 2 bay leaves. So we'll throw that all in there. We're gonna let it bring to a boil, and then we'll let it simmer for about an hour and a half. While we do that, when we bring it to a boil, I would usually add in my gumbo crabs then. and let it simmer for that hour and a half. And then the last 30 minutes of the hour and a half is when I add the shrimp, because obviously shrimp does not take that long to cook. So, all right, see you at the stove. Hey again. So at the stove top, I've got the stock pot here. I went ahead and put the roux back in, warming it up, added the onion. I'm gonna let it get a little hotter, and then start counting down 5 minutes. So we can cook that down. And then I went ahead and just added the garlic in with my bell pepper celery mix. And as soon as we get this cooked down a little bit, add this in, and then we will keep going, following the list of the recipe that I gave you earlier. Mimosas, not just for brunch. All right, now we've cooked everything down. We're gonna add in our beer. Yeah, it can go down there, it's fine. Add all that in. Again, this is Abita Amber Lager. It is brewed in Abita Springs here in Louisiana. So, yeah, you should try it out. It's really good. I don't drink beer too much anymore, but if I do, it's always Abita. And so now we're gonna go ahead and add in the shrimp stock. Followed by the seasonings I mentioned earlier, the thyme, your Worcestershire, and your bay leaves. And Tony's. Don't forget Tony's. Tony Chacheres. Opelousas, Louisiana. Mix that all together. And then we're going to bring it to a boil. And then once it comes to a boil, we're going to bring it back down to a simmer. And that's when I'm going to add my gumbo crabs in, and we'll let this set up for an hour and a half. Well, the stock pot is about to boil with all the ingredients in there. These are the gumbo crabs that I've been mentioning this whole time. I'm gonna add them in, and once all this comes to a boil, we're gonna bring it down to a simmer and let it set up for about an hour, and that's when we'll return to add our shrimp in for the remaining 30 minutes. Flash forward, it's an hour later, outfit change, it's getting late, I wanna get comfortable. Gumbo crabs and everything has settled in. I'm gonna go ahead and add the shrimp in now and let it cook down for 30 more minutes. And then we'll turn the heat off and add 2 teaspoons of that gumbo filet in that I told you about. Sassafras root here. Most of the time people have okra in their gumbo. I've never been a big fan of that. And then also people who add tomatoes in their gumbo. No, that's sacrilegious. So if you don't have okra in your gumbo, I recommend that you do this at the end after you turn the heat off, taking it off the stove, and like I said, 2 teaspoons. Thicken it up.